Welcome back to the Bob und Rodelbahn, the bobsled luge track in Altenberg, Germany. The Eberspecher World Cup continues with run number 2 of the doubles competition. As you see, a beautiful moon, a beautiful sky, and pretty nice conditions for some slick sliding on this Altenberg track. The air temperature about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, but the ice is maintaining a pretty good consistency, at least in run number 1. Doubles, heat number 2, moments away. I'm Tim Singer, joined again by my longtime broadcast partner, the sliding sports expert, John Morgan. And John, did you like what you saw in the first heat?
Yeah, it was pretty calm. You know, Altenberg's got the reputation as one of the most difficult tracks in the planet. And, Wendell and Art, they're in third place. Didn't look perfectly relaxed out of the start. But, these are the guys with all the medals. But Stu and Kohler, well, these guys have, they did it last weekend, and it looks like they're going to do it here again.
Only 8 thousandths of a second separate the top 2 sleds, these two, Egert and Beneken, with the Austrian Stoyan Kohler. It's going to be building to an exciting finish. There are about 7 or 8 different sleds still in podium contention. As you see, the splits on your right, they will go from slowest to fastest, as per usual on the World Cup here in run number 2. Keep an eye on those 2 Russians, tied to the thousandth of a second as they look to keep their way into the top 10, if not make their way there. And then really the usual suspects. It's the name of a movie. It's the situation right now where the top 4 in the standings after the first heat are the top 4 that really have been the big names in doubles luge over the past couple of seasons. To the top we go. Run number 2 begins with the Moldavian team that started things off earlier today. This is Siskeno and Opria. They had a time of 43.178. John, it didn't look pretty in the first heat for them, but for the young teams, really just getting down safely is goal number 1.
Hey, look at, they got some great looking uniforms. Again, another good example of how the FIL gets a lot of countries involved in the sport. Tim, I don't know if we saw these guys last year, did we?
I don't think we saw this doubles team. Moldavia did make its appearance on the World Cup. Few and far between did they qualify out of Nations Cup into an actual World Cup race. So
sun coming out, Tim. They're interesting to see what they do for time.
Yeah, on some tracks that's a good thing. On others, not so much.
Pretty much here in a frost team, though. The track doesn't get a lot of sun exposure. You don't have to deal with the shades issue, which is not what we want to see in television. Good smooth lines.
Definitely.
Right down the middle of the track. But sometimes right down the middle is not fast. It means you're steering too much. You got too much control. But this young Moldovan team, 43.34. Tim, that's only 1,700 slower than their first run.
Good to see. And 2-run combined time, that's what matters in 2-heat luge World Cup. It's a 126.526. That's the number on your right. The early lead for Moldavia. And they have one of their singles athletes that also qualified for the World Cup. I'm not sure if they're going to have a relay team tomorrow, but if they do, John, that will be a first time ever for this nation.
That'll be a first. They don't have the speed. They're a couple seconds off the lead. That's why they make it up over the crest. They got to carry their sled up, but if they hurry up, they'll have a chance to get in the leader's box, Tim, and that's good for anybody.
Now, Videjek and Pekny, the first of 2 sleds in today's doubles competition from the Czech Republic. They had a top 20 last year at the World Championships. They teamed up for an 18th place finish. And by virtue of that, they were in the top 5, 5th place in what they call the race within the race, the under 23 World Championship. Ooh, they almost touched the wall there.
Yeah, well, the 5.97 start, not very good. 300 slower than their first heat. That's a big disparity. The start, like anything you want to do, everything has to be consistent. If you're 6th in the first heat, you want to be 6th in the second heat at least. Of course, you want to be the first best time, but you just want to be consistent in the sport, everything you do. You don't want to put your toes out like that. That means he wasn't confident in the line that he had, not there either.
That's a tricky spot right there. The camera really doesn't show that.
Doesn't show it at all.
14, 15, and then they shoot straight down into these finish curves. 125.909, clearly out in front of the Moldavians, but making it interesting from top to bottom.
Yeah, not as much fun they had in that run as they had in their first run, but they'll be the leader.
John, you mentioned all of the new countries getting involved. Here's some stats for you. Last season on the World Cup, 5 different women won races. 11 different men from 6 different nations were on the podium, and in doubles, 6 teams were all winners. So that's great to see them spreading the wealth.
Hey, anytime you see 4 or 5 nations in the top 5 or 6, that's what you want to see. You don't want to see that, though. Putting your toes out, doesn't have confidence there in his lines. That's what happens when you're inexperienced on one of the toughest tracks on the planet.
Stakov and Lisetsky from the Ukraine, sled number 3 here in the early going of run number 2. And John, it's actually a good time when we're talking about all of the nations represented here to mention that 2 World Championship medalist teams, Canada and the USA, are not taking part in the first half of this season.
Yeah, we hope to see them all out there in the first event after Christmas, after New Year's. Drift, not bad. Huge lead, 4/10. But, you know, on this track, that could evaporate, a fraction. Especially 11, 12. These are tough. 2 curves. 13, big pressure left, and then the crossover to 14. Little uphill section now into 15. You can't relax. This is the high-speed part of the track.
66 miles an hour to the finish. Stakov and Lisetsky, they do it by 0.8 of a second. So a huge advantage for them. And how does that measure up against their first heat time?
2,400 slower. So the track, we haven't seen anybody better their first heat time, which tells me might have got a little warmer, Tim.
I wonder what the women are thinking. They don't start for still another hour and a half, their race. And who knows how much warmer it will be then.
Yeah, well, look at these spectacular pictures. 13, 14. Wow, crossover there. The pressure, the G-force. TV doesn't do it justice.
Okay, the Koreans, Park and Cho, on course now. Finished 9th at the Olympic Games on their home track, and really that was a respectable showing, especially when you consider what that track in the Olympics in 2018 did for all of Korean sliding sports, John. They really put it on the map.
Korean, how about Asian sliding? You know, that gave the incentive for I think the Japanese are taking a little bit more interest in the sliding sports, as is Chinese. We know that, I'm saying now the Chinese will win a medal in one of the sliding disciplines. I mean, the Koreans, they won gold in men's skeleton, they won silver in 4-man bobsled, and that was historic, and it really bodes well for the sport to explode into Asia.
For sure, and Park Cho were top 10 in doubles luge. Eileen Frisch had a top 10 in the women's singles. 125.108, second place time right now.
Exact same time. He had 42.55 in the first run, 42.555. I think they had 42.553. So there's the first sled we've seen go faster, Tim, albeit 0.02 of a second.
Yeah, it's faster.
Faster. And little pressure points, you want to stay on those blue lines. They're doing pretty good. They didn't get above the last one. And slingshot effect on the bottom part of the track. And then here's 11-12. Wow. Some pretty unbelievable pictures going through there. Of course, they're probably 5 miles an hour slower at that point than we're going to see from the men's competition. They're the leaders.
Now the Ukrainians, Hua and Lekovich, getting ready at the top. That green light is the time they have in which to start the sled. Hey, and in case you're wondering, we mentioned about the USA and Canada not being here. The veteran USA team, new partners, of course, Mazda and Turdeman finished 17th in Altenberg last year. And Walker Smith of Canada had a top 10, of course, Olympic silver medalists. And they've done well on this track in past years as well. So we certainly hope they will be back.
This track in Whistler has a little bit of similar personality in the fact that it's very challenging. And of course, Whistler is a speed track.
Whistler can hit 90 miles an hour from the top starts, which is incredible.
They don't have that anymore, but yeah, it is a super speedway up there. This isn't much of a super speedway, but boy, the tight, quick turns and the old design. There's the first sled not to get in the leader's box when they came down.
Right, and they had the green most of the way until the last few curves. It's Ukraine and Ukraine. They could stop the race now and they would have the top two positions. That would be a big day in Kiev.
Well, a little late here on 9. The left foot came out a little bit. Corrected well, head back. Good coaching there. This here looks like I got a little too high there.
Well, looking loose at the top, the first of the Russians, sorry, of the Austrians.
Got a little tie roll, yeah.
Yep, they finished 13th last week in their World Cup debut. It's always a routine. Different doubles teams do different things up here.
The chin on his back.
Some are verbal. They talk to each other right up until they start. Some do a count. Others just do it based on their routine, non-verbal.
We squared that up around curve 1 with a little bit like too much steering. They've got green numbers. They should have. They're the most experienced probably team in the 5 or 6 that have come down. This is the 6th sled.
Well, and they're not that experienced on the World Cup. They come from an experienced nation.
There you go.
Ooh, that's a hard hit.
Watch out there. Watch out. They don't have this sled under control. Oh, I'm surprised they stayed on the runners, Tim. The speed part of the track got them, and they still, the last 200 meters is a little bit of a nightmare for these guys.
We can classify that as a bit of a spill. Fortunately, it wasn't a crash. And if nothing else, it was great agility just to stay on that sled and get a finish time.
Well, inexperience. Tim, you mentioned it. They're an experienced country, and they did pretty good last week in their debut, but this is how not to do it. No confidence here. He's already made the mistake. The mistake was back up at 11-12. This is down 13, 14, 15, and they finally get control here in the finish, but by then, they relegated themselves to dropping at least 3 spots. Yeah, hands up.
Yeah, what can you do? You learn a few lessons. Happy to be full-time World Cuppers this year. 16th place after run number 1, the Slovakians, Tomas Vaverček and Maciej Šmiš. They are a half second out of the lead. Of course, that is not attainable. And they're actually quite a bit even behind 15th place. So they'll need some help if they want to crack the top 15 here. There were 6th place finishers at the Youth Olympics back in 2016 in Lillehammer.
Green numbers. Clean. Good there, still green. 14, uphill, he crosses over. Speed 106. Ooh, little skid there, causes him to be high on the 15, 16 in the finish. Leaders.
They had enough of a lead where they would not fall into the red despite the late problems.
Yeah,
Vaverček and Šmiš of Slovakia out in front.
2800ths lead over the sled at the bottom in the first run, 37 now. One mistake we saw, Tim.
Still Slovakia, we expect to see them in the relay tomorrow. They had a 6th or 7th last week in relay, which is great that this nation is showing a little bit more depth on the chart.
Clean lines, little skid there though, you saw that, and then he got him high on the take on and he looped there. But you know, they're the leaders, and they could have been in the lead a little bit more without that mistake on 13.
Wojciech and Jakub up next from Poland. Chmielewski, Kowalewski. Bronze medal podium winners at the second to last World Cup last season in Winterberg. That was a breakthrough race for them. Top man, 25 years old. Bottom man, 26.
Tim, Poland won the gold and silver medal at the World Championships in Imst in 1963. So Poland's been sliding, maybe not as successful as the early days of the FIL.
That's good, though. That's impressive. And this is the closest track in the world to Poland.
There's a track in Poland that hosted the World Championships twice, Pernicia. And single slalom during the second,
Jersey.
I think.
Jersey.
So Poland's got a little history in the sport. So let's see if these two young Polish athletes can hold the lead.
64.7 miles per hour. They cross at 42.464. That's 0.3 of a second slower than their first run time, but well enough in the bank to keep them in their position in the top 15.
So they get a chance to go to the leader's box if they don't get bugged for inspection.
Once again, John, no spectators here, no family members even, just the coaches and the event officials alongside the athletes. They have such strict protocol of testing about where people can be, when the masks need to be on. We'll see that a little later on with the flower ceremony, but they're doing everything they can to keep winter sports alive as we get ready for our next competitors from Italy, Emanuel Rieder, Simone Keinswaldner. And John, a lot of winter Olympic sports have been taking the hit in the last couple of weeks. Ski jumping, Nordic combined, biathlon have all had plenty of positive tests.
Yeah, just congratulations to the FIL and how they conducted the staging the first event, and now here in the second event. And difficult times we're all dealing with, but staging the events is crucial for these young athletes. Can you imagine an athlete in the sport and you're at the peak of your career and all of a sudden you have to miss? It's something, you can't get it back. So again, the FIL's done a fantastic job with getting these events up staged.
Well, a quarter of a second up from an Italian team, as you were alluding to earlier, John. They've had the fastest start time so far here in run number 2.
This is a much better run, 42.00, Tim. That is 1100s better.
Yeah,
1100s better. So big improvement. They made a little mistake, and we got that little message that the Italians have put a lot of concentration on their starts. And three of the Italian teams in the competition have 3 of the 4 top starts. Some good lines here. Nice split screen comparison. The sled on the right. The Italians, looks like they got in and out of the curve quicker than the sled on the left. You want to get on that. You want to get out of curve as early as you can, Kim. I think in all the sliding sports, so you can dictate where you're getting off the curve on your own terms.
Next up, we have 2 Russian sleds that are separated by nothing, tied to the 1,000th of a second. Denisov and Antonov will be the first to go here, and right behind them, Yushakov and Pokhara, both tied for 12th place after run number 1.
I think the way they determine it is what your start number is, and the person with the higher start number gets to go first. That's why these 2 are going first.
They were the second of the 2 to start in the first run. That'll be interesting. But this is the first race of the season, as I mentioned in run number 1. Nizov and Antonov had a positive COVID test not long before the season began. They skipped last week, were cleared to come here for run number 2, for race number 2.
Clean, 500 speed, excellent, 108.3. Some of the best speed we've seen, should be the leaders.
At 67.2 miles per hour, 123.969, their 2-run combined. Russia out in front of Italy and Poland midway through run number 2 here in Altenberg.
Good clean run. Speed, the best speed we've seen. 108.3, we saw 108.6 6 in the first run. This is the 11-12 to 13 speed part of the track. Get the crossover here. Not a lot of opportunity to hit your mark. Looks like they get in there a little late. Can't criticize too much. They're the leaders.
For the first time in several years, Russia will not be hosting a World Cup race this year. They put on a great show last year at the World Championships. Here comes the next Russian team, Yushakov and Prokhorov. The remaining 8 races, 1 in Latvia, 1 in Austria, 1 now in Switzerland. The rest will all be here in Germany.
Well, this is a Russian national championship, the last 2 sleds.
The spirited race among the Russians in all 3 disciplines has been great over the last few seasons. We've talked a lot about this with Germany, but now Russia in doubles, women and men, they have podium contenders every week, so they have a little battle within the race every stop.
Russians have been strong in the sport since they entered it. 100 separation, 108.3. He's got a chance with the speed here. On the bottom 400, it's only 107, so he's a kilometer down. He's going to fall back probably 20 hundredths to his teammate. Oh, he hits hard, 1500s back. Looks like he's going to be third. He's going to drop 2 spots.
He does. So he's in. The Italians sit in between the 2 Russians. It's Denisov and Antonov, as you see, leading the way over Rieder Keinswaldner with 10 sleds remaining.
Yeah, that speed in the bottom part of the track. You get over there 108 kilometers, you've got a chance to maintain your position. You get down to where they were a kilometer down to their teammates and the Italians. Crossover. 13 to 14, look at the lean. Leaning is better than steering. If you can make the sled move to that mark you want to get on.
Second of the Italians getting ready to go now at the top. Actually, it's the Latvians, sorry, before they go. Lugramovic and Kalnins. 11th place after run number 1.
Start.
It's only a 600th advantage entering this run over the Russians, and that's exactly what they maintained through the start time. Now it's down to 200s, 300s.
Yeah, a little drift on the exit of 9. They had a 600ths lead up there in 5. It's down to 100. He's going to need 108 kilometer speed. If he doesn't, he's going to fall. Right here, we'll see the speed. That'll tell us it's almost a dead heat. The speed, 108.2. Red numbers, still going to be close.
It was 9 thousandths before it turned red. It
200
is close. Yeah, just 200ths of a second. That drops them just 1 spot. So Denisov and Antonov making their move, which is not a big surprise after a rough first run back on the World Cup Tour.
Look at that move. Good way to get hurt. Catchers, those little booties in one of those cracks and you could tumble, but Tim can't fault much here. The lines, look, it gets on 13 to what he wants. Crossover 14. Looks pretty confident.
Okay, John, we make our way now to the top 10 after the first heat, and starting things off will be from Italy, Ivan Nagla and Fabian Malaya. As the congratulations happen down below. They have to get socially distant pretty quickly, though. They allow them a little fist bump or an elbow bump. And now Nagla and Malaya. 7th place at the Olympic Games. I've mentioned this a lot. That was really one of the surprise stories of the Pyeongchang Games. I mean, we focus a lot on the podium, but a couple of weeks out, this team did not even have the Olympic team made. And then they were the top placing Italians in 2018.
Well, last week at Innsbruck, I noticed they had the 2nd best start in the first run, the 12th best start in the second run. So that's why they finished where they did, Tim. A little inconsistency. Huge lead of 1400ths. That's really relative to the start. Boy, they're scrambling with his feet there to steer to get off the Kreisel. That's why he's down to 900ths. Mistake there, too. So if he has a low 107 speed here. He could lose it down to 200s. There's the low 7 speed. He's going to lose it.
Into the red now as the Italians cross in 3rd place. Again, the splits are very tight. So you can be within a 1/10 of a second, but still drop back a couple of places, and we just saw it right there.
Yeah, a little inconsistency from this Italian duo over the last 2 events. You know, and Kreisel, you could see a lot of movement with his steering with his feet. Just didn't look comfortable. Here, watch the feet. Watch the feet spread here a little bit. See, he's not real confident. Boy, a lot of scrambling there. But he had 1,400s lead up top and lost it all down here. I think before they got to this point here, they'd already lost their the speed number they needed.
Okay, the first of the Germans, and really an impressive first couple of weeks on tour for this duo, whom Coach Norbert Locke has high praise for already. Hannes Alamunda and Paula Gubitz. And John, our good longtime colleague Ron Ringeth has tweeted in to remind us that many of the young teams and the young athletes in the sport were only expected to take part in a couple of World Cup races this year, but we may see a lot more of them now because there is no Junior World Cup this season as a result of the pandemic.
Well, Norbert Huber is talking about these guys. Tim, the 15th best starts, that's what caught my attention.
8th best there. Obviously,
an
element of the sport they'll still have to work on, but they were as fast as anyone on the lower part of the track in the first heat.
Well, they got a 500 lead. Let's see how they do in the slingshot out of Kreisel, 11-12. Now the big G-force curve, 13-14. Crossovers clean. Coming right at us, right down the middle, 200s, 107.5. This is going to be red numbers.
This has been a recurring theme, John, over the last 6 or 7 sleds.
These guys have got 5 positions they've come up, right?
That's right. Yeah, Denisov and Antonov began in a tie for 12th. They've now made their way into the top 9. So really 4 spots because they were in that tie, but more to come.
Hard to figure out where they lost it. They had all the green numbers all the way to the speed part of the track, and this is 14, the big G-force curve.
Well, we'll see if they can stay in the top 10. You can bet there are 2 men watching with great interest right now in Winterberg named Goyaka and Gam, as they're looking to earn their spot back on this tough German doubles World Cup squad. Anyway, on we go. Kashkin and Korshunov, the final of the Russian sleds in 8th place. It's a rare day over the last few seasons that we have had no Russian in the top 6 after the first run. But we currently have one with the lead down at the bottom and another on course right now.
584 in the first run, 582 in the second run, so they've improved.
Oh,
but
no.
They just threw it all the way there.
Did they throw it all away, John? 1400s was their advantage.
I don't know. I got to believe that's got to cost them a lot. We'll find out here in about 2 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah, down at 3. It cost them 11, but now the they're red numbers, so it's going to probably low 107 speed. They could fall 3 or 4 places. Not bad, 107.6. It's only going to fall 2 places probably.
To the finish line, and wow, they fell back 4 spots.
4 spots.
So Kashin and Korshunov sit right now in 5th.
They're getting tired living in there so long, too.
We have one Russian team that has, Denisov and Antonov are obviously the experienced Russian team, the Olympic medalists from 2014 in the relay. So this isn't a big surprise. And clearly they must have had some issues in run number 1.
Boy, the consistency between the 2 of them coming off the start. They practiced that so much. Now this drift, this is where it cost him. Boy, Tim looks like he came off too early, got a little wound up, and just took him back to the left wall. That's one of the hardest hits we've seen so far in this heat on the exit of curve 9.
Like the Germans, the Latvians have a very impressive mix of both experienced Olympic medalists and young athletes that big things are expected from. And this is a Latvian team, Boxen Pluma, that debuted last week on the World Cup with a top 5 after run number 1. They're comfortably in the top 10 here in race number 2. A little later on this weekend, tomorrow in the men's race, we will be seeing defending youth Olympic gold medalist Jens Berzins from Latvia.
5:77 start, the first run, one of the top 5 starts for this young team. They matched that time. And they do the same thing as the sled that just came down. They got a little wound up in the exit of 9 and going to cost them dearly.
This course, a good chunk of these turns are in the shade, not in the sun, which is great design.
More problems, Tim. Now the question is, how far will they fall? The Russians are going to live another sled. Probably going to fall 4 or 5 spots.
To the finish, they fall 7 spots.
Wow.
Denisov and Antonov, they got to work on their celebration down there, because the Russian men and women, they have the dance down in the leader's box when they move up all of these spots.
It's almost like they're embarrassed to be there.
They got that Dustin Johnson mellow approach, right?
Yeah. Hey, they moved up 6 spots, plus the guys that they were tied with, their teammates. This looks like a replay of the previous sled. Same problem. Hit almost in the exact same spot. Looking high there. Oh, no confidence. Not a comfortable run for these young Latvian athletes, Tim. They're going to learn from this.
Now our top 6 after the first heat, and somewhat lost in all of the attention of Stoy Kohler's double victories last weekend was the performance of this Austrian team, Yannick Müller and Armin Frauscher, who had a 2nd and a 7th in the 2-run race and the sprint, and with that, they find themselves ranked number 2 in the World Cup standings in the very early going of this new season.
Well, last week they came from 4th in the first run. They posted the 2nd fastest time of the 2nd run and got themselves a silver medal. Let's see if they can do the same magic here on this 2nd run. Start, great. 1500s lead, great, but we've seen that evaporate right here. Not for these two. Perfect lines on the exit of 9.
Still well into the green, but we've seen a lot of time get bled down here below 1300s. Is it enough, John?
Should be enough. Clean here, 13, 14. Right down the middle here on the exit. This is good. Should be 107.8. There's 107.6 speed. Should be enough. It's going to be, it'll be single digits, maybe 10, 1200s.
14, nice, good call there. 123.955, so the long reign in the leader zone comes to an end for Denisov and Antonov, but all things considered, not bad. They've moved up at least 5 positions.
Tim, it was 100, so they lost back all sorts of time there in the bottom. Again, remember the Russians had 108.3 speed, and they're the ones that are still in the leaders. Well, they're not in the leaders box anymore, but that's why they lived there for 5 or 6 sleds. Good paddle, consistent. Got the left knee come up to hook the Kufin to come around. That looked a little, took too much at 12.
Italy already with 2 in the top 7 at the moment, with 5 sleds remaining, and now the final Südtirolians are getting ready at the top. Ludwig Rieder, Patrick Rasne. They finished 7th as a team at the last Olympic Games in Pyeongchang. Italy with a long tradition of Olympic excellence in doubles luge.
Real quiet coming out of that first curve. 75, they had a 78 in the first run, so a much better start in the second run, and they know they have to go for it. They got a 1000ths lead. Let's see if they can hold it.
Through the Kreisel, exactly 1/10 of a second up on the Austrians. Will
still
experience play an advantage over youth here?
Only a major mistake here could prevent them from taking the lead down to 7.
Yes, at 800th right now. Have a drink of water there, John.
You got it, buddy.
Cross the finish line, and
200.
they hang on by a thread. 27 thousandths. It is Italy out in front. It will be another top 5 for Reeder and Rassner, who are off to a great start in this young season. One of their best opening sessions in a long time. 5th and 3rd last week, and no worse than 5th today.
Well, great start. They do it at the top of the track. Speed wasn't perfect in the bottom. Tim, I'm noticing this. There's not that speed we saw 6-8 sleds ago. Nice split view here. The sled on the left is getting this curve too late compared to the sled on the right.
Now the top 4 separated by just 12 hundredths from 1st to 4th. First up, we will have the Latvians, who actually only have an 8 thousandths of a second advantage over the team from Italy that just took over the lead. Last week, it was the worst of times, the best of times for Andras and Joris Šīks, who finished 14th in the opening race, but came back with a second place finish in the sprint. They sat in that leader zone for a long time, and we thought for a while they might win that race.
What if it was the setup of the sled runners that first day? Maybe they went for a radical
I think there were a couple of early mistakes is what it was.
Well, the mistakes in both runs, because they didn't have a good run either heat. Much better so far here in Altenberg.
4 paddles and a nice settle. Let's see their start time. They're usually pretty good at the start. 7th fastest at a 5.818.
Same as they had in the first run. That's a drift. Not as bad as we've seen from some sleds. 500's back now, but this is an experienced Olympic medalist team that usually finds a way for speed in the bottom. Is 200s, green numbers, could be 108 speed. This looks clean. 700s,
yeah,
there's the 108.
Good.
This is the leaders.
Latvians, nice. Fastest run of both heats. So they did this somewhat emphatically as they move out in front by 1600ths. That's as big a gap as there is between any 2 places, going all the way between 10th and 11th is where you have to find a bigger split than 1st to 2nd right now.
Not too many sleds have come down. I've had that 108 kilometer speed, Tim. These 2 experienced athletes from that tiny nation of Latvia that it's a sliding sports powerhouse.
Yeah, next to hockey, the sliding sports are the national sports, are the biggest sports in the country of Latvia. And
awesome. You think they liked it? You think they
yeah,
know it too? Besides,
they've made a case for a podium. I mean, they are 800ths in back of the Germans coming up next, but that was solid. As you would expect for the most experienced team in the sport right now. Now Toby Vendel and Toby Alt getting ready at the top. They look pretty calm and relaxed, John.
Well, when you've got as many Olympic medals and world champion, these guys are a pretty accomplished duo.
Now, if you're keeping score, and that's exactly what we do, the Tobys have 44 career World Cup wins. Right behind them at 43 are Egert and Benniken, who have the lead and are getting ready to go at the top. So we could be seeing a little bit of pride, a little intra-nation rivalry at work here.
Well, they went a little slower at the start than the first run, but they've got a huge lead, 1100s. Right now, this is their race to lose to be the leader at the bottom. 1100 still. So this has got to be 108, maybe a 4 or 5 speed at this rate.
Perfect exit right there.
110, that can't be right.
Well, and they had a clock issue in the first run.
Yeah.
Maybe they, not quite sure what's going on, but
41.803. Faster by 200s.
Wow.
110 kilometers. No one else has got near that number.
Now, only 8 thousandths of a second separate first from second after the first run. This duo was only 400ths back. Do you think they've made a little bid to get to the top here, John?
If I was them, I think I would be very confident that they've won at least a bronze medal, Tim, so they can get into the leaders box and hang out there. But, you know, in sport, when you don't control your own destiny, they're going to have to hope for one of those sleds in front of them to falter, if not both of them. How can you fault any of those lines?
Well, over a mile per hour faster than anyone, which is unbelievable.
Yeah,
and now we have 2 remaining. And I said it a moment ago, I'll say it again. 8,000ths of a second separate these last 2 sleds. And there's no way to describe what that means in this sport other than one little misblink of your eye might cost you your spot.
So these 2 had the best time of both runs last week. Today, they were the second best time of the first heat by only 8,000ths of a second. It's a dead heat right there, right to the 100.
Thousands.
No mistakes allowed, because they had a 400s in the bank before this started. Now it's red numbers.
And back to an exact tie. This is going to be close right to the finish. The speed, it can't
Check
be
the
110.
speed up. Oh, 100th lead, 108.6. I don't know. Green numbers, back and forth. Close your eyes.
That was an absolutely
100th
puzzling run as they went from green to red to green to red. With 2 splits tied to the 1,000th. In the end, Stoy and Kohler maintain their position and will maintain their lead in the World Cup standings when all is said and done today.
Yeah, they will be the World Cup leaders no matter what, because the people coming up right now, you know, Eckert next wasn't in second, so they can do no worse than second. They'll maintain the jersey, Tim. Look at them shift back and forth. You know, that was between 12 and 13. Here's the crossover. Look at his head go back. A lot of confidence at the high-speed part of the track. Well, they got about another minute and a half to figure out if they're going to be the leaders of this World Cup, Tim.
1 team remaining. Certainly the most dominant team over the past several years. Tony Agert, the airline pilot, on top. And on the bottom man, the musician, Sasha Benniken. They are the defending world champions, the 3-time World Cup champions, and with a victory here, they would tie the 2 Tobys as the all-time winningest team in the sport of doubles luge.
Well, the start. Okay, 76. Quicker than they had in the first run. A little drift on the exit of 9. 600s in the bank. That's a lot of time compared to they were only 8,000ths ahead, so they've increased that green number. And it's down to 400s.
I think Austria might have the slight advantage here.
And ooh, skid there. Look at the crossover there. Drift down to 300s.
108.2.
Right to the 100.
The Germans versus Austria on yet another weekend advantage.
Oh,
Austria
not
by 8.
a reversible fortune to 8,000th the other way.
Incredible. Incredible close race and close finish as Stoy and Kohler stay unbeaten on this young season. The 2 German teams, Agert Benniken and Wendel Art, make their way onto the podium, but 3 for 3 in 2020.
This wasn't perfect here, Tim, in the exit of 9. Came out a little early, avoided hitting the wall, corrected. He had a huge lead there. Look at these lines, almost exact as you would expect from the top 2 teams in today's race. There's the Georg Hackel on the left, and the Austrians celebrate.
Well, a big improvement, all things considered. As I mentioned in run number 1, Sasha Benniken said we're still far from 100%. If they're far from 100%, John, not bad here, losing out second place by just 8,000ths of a second. So it's Stoy and Kohler, 300 World Cup points. You'll see in a moment when that graphic is flashed, but it was a close race among the top 3. Incredible 200 separating them.
8,000ths of a second separated the first 2 sleds in the first heat, and then reversed it. The other team picked up 16,000ths of a second to win the race. You really can't say going away, Tim. It was as close as you can have it.
Absolutely. So they will, if you did not watch last week, there's a new protocol, an understandable one here at the finish area, as no luminary is going to be passing out the awards, the flowers and the medals. This is a help yourself And when
Smorgasbord.
when you finish second by 800ths or thousandths of a second, don't you feel inclined to go over to that middle table and grab that medal?
Yeah. Well, in bobsledding, it would have been a tie for the gold, Tim. It would have been because they only go to the hundredth of a second.
Which has happened at a couple of Olympics, 1968, 1998.
And also in 2018.
That's right. Exactly.
A couple times.
Okay, so this is the situation in Altenberg. Stoy and Kohler, they've won here before, and they've won again 2 years in a row now, and 2 weeks in a row they are on top of the podium. And actually, it's updated now. They actually have 300 points for Stoy and Kohler in the World Cup standings, as they captured the sprint last week as well. But keeping in mind that they're going to be 2 different World Cup standings, they're going to have 2 trophies this year, one inclusive of the sprint and one without the sprint. So without the sprint, Stoy and Kohler have those 200 points. Egert and Bennigan have moved up with this week's result.
Beating the Germans in Germany. Congratulations to that Austrian duo. That's a tough task, and they did it today by 8,000ths of a second.
And now the results reflecting last week's sprint. Bendel and Art, Egert and Bennigan, really the Sheeks brothers in 6th place with one bad showing last weekend. Expect for them to move up. As I mentioned, all the usual suspects, John, as we are still